When it comes to fashion capitals, Turkey hasn't bridged the gap with places like France, Italy and the US just yet. But it's a country on the cusp of change as a new generation begins to muscle its way to the front row. And as a nation, it already has a great foundation, as well as tons of talent in textiles to take from. During our time together, I'll introduce you to some of the faces of Istanbul's fashion elite, as well as those who piece together the creative designs behind the scenes. We'll meet those fighting the good fight against the environmental scourge of fast fashion, as well as the tech-savvy using social media to tap into the ever-moving millennial market. I'll explain what people in the modest fashion sector are labelling the new cool, and I'll try on some of the fashion trends of the future. Worth $3 trillion, the global apparel market is a massive industry, employing up to 75 million people. But it's also a hugely volatile business, at the mercy of commodity prices, political instability, climate change, and most of all, the fickle shopper. The State of Fashion, the most comprehensive report ever compiled on the industry, says consumers have become more demanding, more discerning, and less predictable. So it's a challenging time for all those involved. So where does Turkey stand amongst all of this? Well, to understand the present, let's dip into the past for a minute. Ottoman women definitely knew how to dress. Their beautiful gowns were adorned with rich texture and tapestries and stood the test of time, as this sumptuous collection of clothing from the 18th and 19th century shows. But they also knew how to move with the times, as this promotional video, filmed by the American military back in 1953, highlights.
Wherever there are clothes and women to wear them, there will be fashion and fashion design. Here, young Turkish girls engage in this fascinating feminine occupation. The dresses modeled here by Gunseli Bazar, Miss Turkey and Miss Europe of 1952 attest to the freshness and appeal of modern Turkey's women.
Today's Turkey's textile industry is among the top 10 exporters in the world and the second largest supplier to the EU, accounting for around 26 billion a year. The fashion and textile industry accounts for around 7% of GDP, and it employs around 1 million people. So who's behind all of this designing, stitching, dyeing and selling? Well, sit back, grab a beverage of your choice, and I'll tell you. Let's begin in the country's biggest city. Well, this may not look like the most fashionable street in Istanbul, but it sure houses some of the most popular names in the industry. Today I'm going to meet two sisters who set up the brand DJ Kaymak 25 years ago and are still going strong today. This is the Istanbul office where Ece and Ayşe Kayak run the Turkish side of their business. The rest of the time they are in Paris, with Ece in charge of the creative direction. Ayşe is the brains behind the business. It all began in 1992 when Ece, straight out of college, created a collection of 15 white poplin shirts that stirred excitement in the fashion world. A year later, the duo launched the DJ Kayak brand and presented their first women's ready-to-wear collection in Paris. Over the past 2 decades, they have fine-tuned their look, which Vogue has described as being a mix between a French count and Audrey Hepburn. Ece's dresses have graced the red carpet in China, been worn by top actresses like Fan Bingbing. The heavily beaded and beautifully crafted pieces may be the essence of haute couture, but they're not always the lightest. Ece says her design technique can sometimes be a fight against gravity. This dress, for example, weighed 25 kilograms after it was finished.
I'm very careful about the materials. The materials should be the best quality and best feeling, best timeless, strength. So one design can endure like 10, 15 years and then it's always in the shape.
You still have a massive connection with Turkey and obviously where you're from, but also you actively choose to make your clothes here? Tell me more about what the manufacturing means to you here.
It's very important. If the production is not following your designs, your creativity, it doesn't work. I mean, it's a business. So you create, you produce, and then you deliver. So it's it should be all together. So Turkish high quality of stitching, of hand-tailored, you know, in the 70s, before 70s, were usually and mostly done handmade, you know. So you buy your fabric, you go to your tailor, and then he takes your measures, and then your suit or your dress was made like that, you know. Then pret-a-porter came on the market, and etc. But then this talent, you know, hand making and hand finishing talent is there still.
Do you get emotional when you think about being Turkish, and how are you very proud?
I'm very proud of being Turkish, first of all. Really, I'm very, very proud. And I hope, this is my wish, all these Turkish creative people, you know, artists, and then manufacturers, and then, you know, hand workmanship, will be more known and then appreciated in the world, because we really deserve it.
Do you think there's a misconception that people have about Turkey?
I mean, foreigners, they ask if it's safe. Of course it's safe. I'm living there. I mean, my life is precious. I wouldn't go there if that was the case. And then people are very nice. You know Turkey, and the food is beautiful, the country is beautiful, you have incredible heritage of culture and then history, and then, you know, we are Turkish, we live there, and we're gonna die here. And then, you know, it's beautiful. It's really not dangerous.
Whether it's safe or not, the perception of Turkey as dangerous is a reality. Just like Paris, London and Berlin, Istanbul has been the victim of terrorist attacks in recent years. At Istanbul Fashion Week in March 2016, people affected by suicide bombings were remembered at the opening show. And in January 2017, the city's Fashion Week had to be postponed for 2 months due to a deadly massacre at a nightclub.
Obviously, Istanbul and Turkey has been passing through difficult times. And I think it's miraculous that we are doing this fashion week. You know, if these might have happened in other cities, maybe they might have cancelled. But you know, we are going on. We persevere actually. So you know.
This is Istiklal, Turkey's busiest street. On any weekend, up to 3 million people come here to either shop or just hang out. It's also the place where a lot of high street brands choose to have not one but 2 shops, and it's also the place where Istanbul Fashion Week is taking place. This is Grand Pera, a stunning 19th century building that was beautifully restored in 2016. It now hosts everything from film screenings to gallery exhibitions, as well as fashion designers and their entourage. While you might not recognise any famous faces in the front row, those who cover the big 4, namely Paris, Milan, New York and London fashion weeks, say Istanbul offers something unique.
I think there's definitely a cultural difference in the way the clothes are presented, you know, the look. There's obviously a Middle Eastern influence in the designs, a lot of the designs. So there's that kind of, in Istanbul there's that crossover between Western and Eastern, which is really interesting. It's quite a unique look. I've noticed the models have quite a different look. So yeah, that's quite key, I think, in the final looks that are presented here.
When it comes to fashion weeks, Istanbul is still in its infancy. Being only a decade old, it's playing catch-up with the more established cities. But organisers have high hopes for the country's young generation of designers. Mehtap Elaede is president of the Turkish Fashion Designers Association. Set up in 2006, the group wants to boost the profile of Turkey's emerging talent. Mehtap is a fashion designer herself, whose collections are sold in 19 different countries, and she kindly invited us backstage to see the chaos before the catwalk.
It's been like maybe 10 years that we've been organizing these fashion shows under some different names, but now it's, I think, the 9th season with Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week Istanbul. So it's quite new, but it's a challenge for Turkish designers. But I think the good thing about Turkish designers is that every designer has something different to offer, because that's what the geography is about. So I think that's one of the good aspects of Turkish fashion designers in the global scene. In Turkey, there has been so many civilizations throughout the history. It's like treasure we're sitting on.
And you talked about challenges. Tell me some of the challenges that Turkish designers or Turkey is facing to be put on the fashion map.
Actually, it's not something that's totally for Turkish fashion designers. The current situation is like, it is a challenge to be a fashion designer in this world, let's say, because when you're a designer label, it's not just design you have to present, it's the branding, it's the marketing, it's the positioning, it's the pricing, it's the sourcing, there are so many things you have to be good at. So that's the challenge, actually. I mean, you have to put together everything in the right amount, at the right time, at the right place. So this is a challenge.
While some may argue that fashion is a frivolous, seemingly vacuous industry, many others believe it's not. As well as being a creative outlet for many artistic and talented people, it can also reflect society at a period in time.
Mustafa Kemal had created a new nation. For the first time in centuries, Turkey belonged to her own people.
When the Turkish Republic was established in 1923, there was a militarist push to promote a more secular society. This included laws banning female teachers, lawyers and politicians from wearing headscarves while working in government institutions. But over the past decade, this has changed under President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who came into power in 2002. Hijabs were allowed back on university campuses in 2011, the civil service in 2013, and the military in 2017. There's a huge market for modest clothing in Turkey, and it's not the only place solidifying its share of the business. It's estimated that the sector will be worth anywhere from $300 to $450 million by 2020. And businesses are already picking up on its potential. Designers like Dolce & Gabbana, H&M and Nike are joining what's been called the modest movement, helped along by savvy social media influencers peddling their posts and expressing themselves through their style. Both Istanbul and London held their first ever modest fashion weeks in 2016 and 2017, while other cities have been including modest fashion designers from Asia, Africa and the Middle East as standalone shows during their fashion weeks. But some say modest fashion isn't only for the religiously devout. Founded in New York in August 2014, the Root Collective makes what it says are killer clothes for women who believe modesty is empowering and that covering up isn't about quietening down. The exclusively online brand has most of its customers in the US, the UK, the UAE and Australia, who are aged between 25 and 35. The company has offices in New York and London, but gets its clothes made in Turkey by the same people who list Kanye West, Karl Lagerfeld and Rag & Bone as clients. The creative team, led by director Canan Çolu, is also based in Turkey, so she invited me to her apartment for tea and a chat. Obviously, conservative fashion or modest fashion has been around for hundreds of years.
Exactly.
But why all of a sudden is it this new buzzword in the fashion industry per se?
Because people, I guess, have realized that it's a growing market and people are spending a lot of money in this for this purpose. And also there is this new cool we are mentioning within our brand as well. If you look at these luxury brands such as Celine, The Row, Vetements, all these brands are creating this also kind of modest styles which is a bit more looser styles, looser silhouettes, longer silhouettes, which we are also offering our clients as well. I'm guessing it's because people, the women are trying to describe themselves in a different way now. Instead of, like with the bodycon dresses, it's more about their, let's say, intellectual visions and or artistic talents. They want to have these conversations with people. It's not about the male gaze now.
Interesting. So it's almost like a shift in society as much as anything.
Exactly.
So do you think it's like women are working more, they have their own money now?
Exactly, true.
Yeah.
So they have women are gaining their power. Throughout the years they have already did that, but it's now, as I mentioned before, the new cool is, being more confident, and it's not about what you're wearing, it's like about your style, your attitude.
Another Turk delighting, see what I did there, the fashion industry is Bora Aksu. He's based in the UK and a darling of the British media who love his ever-evolving vision. He's been a staple at London Fashion Week since his breakout show in 2003. Since then, Buru has collaborated with many big names from Topshop and Nike to Anthropologie, as well as Turkish brand Koton. After his 2010 autumn-winter collection was shown at London Fashion Week, Vogue said there was still the romantic Bora, the tulle, the capes and the elements we love to see, but this time his warrior women took on a cyber edge. His clothes have been worn by people like Erin O'Connor, Sienna Miller, Ellie Goulding and Keira Knightley, and his trophy case is overflowing with awards. He works from his studio in Canary Wharf, having moved to the UK from Turkey more than 2 decades ago.
The reason I came to London was because at that time there was no fashion school. There was like a textile school and teaching textiles and colors and drawing, but there was nothing available that teaching fashion design, and that's what I really wanted to learn. So I believe this is almost like a process, it just kind of getting there. I think for me Turkey is kind of growing really fast and the fashion industry is growing really fast, but it's still when you compare it to the industry here or in Paris or Milan, this is for hundreds of years that they been family businesses or fashion houses. The fashion or design as a concept is something very respectable, and here, for example, the government support it, and you have support from the Queen or the Prime Minister and stuff. So it's almost taking it very seriously. So I think here, even when I was studying, I think being Turkish or my heritage always a positive point for me, because it was kind of how you differentiate yourself from others, because most of my inspirations, if you look into my collections, always comes from either my childhood memories, or my grandma, the people that I grow up with, and lots of cultural elements that comes in there. So actually having that heritage in me, I use it to my advantage. But unfortunately, still Turkey is still known as a good manufacturing place, and I think it's in that kind of transition time that it just kind of growing out of it and wants to be known as also a design capital. And actually there's such interest, because when I was there, this is back 21 years ago, fashion design or people the young generation who was interested in fashion design was such a small quantity. It was such a minority, and right now it's one of the third biggest industry that young generation wants to be involved in. Lots of people wants to be a fashion designer or other side of fashion design and in the fashion world, which is a very, I think, positive thing. So I have really great hopes in the young generation who is gonna, I think, just bring this sort of new level and layer that is gonna kind of shine through. It's, I think right now it's kind of boiling, but it's going to come to a place that it's going to be just done.
Back in Istanbul, that boiling and simmering of Turkish talent is definitely starting to blossom. One of the reasons Turkey is gaining a foothold in the fashion industry is because it's investing in young designers. I'm here in the fabulous neighbourhood of Nişantaşı to visit the Istanbul Moda Academy, or Istanbul Fashion Academy. The school was set up in 2007 by the European Union, Turkey's Ministry of Economy, as well as Istanbul's Textile and Apparel Exporters Association. Its director Şeyda Lafca was happy to show me around and tell me all about the history of this beautiful building.
It was a home of, in Ottoman former empire time, a home of, let's say, the Ministry of Finance. It has always been a school for the education, and it was ladies' school, it was fashion production school, and it was a school for music as well.
We head downstairs to see the cutting and sewing rooms, where the hard graft takes place for the 350 students who go here.
This is one of the open access room, like the pattern cutting and laboratory, and we make sure that the students can work here anytime if there's no lecture going on here. So we make sure that we have technicians in those rooms and available to work with the students.
So 3 in the morning you could come in here?
Yes, they can.
Across the hall we meet a third-year student preparing her final project, a stunning coat with 4 sleeves that she tells me is meant to imbue a sense of duality.
It's good on you. You have a wonderful model.
Oh, thank you.
It's really remarkable that the color combinations and how they work with textures, how they can realize textures. I think it's something really what is in the culture.
Belgian fashion designer turned lecturer at IMA, Raf Stesmans, has been passing on his knowledge of the European market to his Turkish students for 6 years now. It's a fledgling fashion industry here, about 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Are you excited to be here at this time?
I am, yes. Yeah, it's really nice to see. I work with a lot of young people at school here, and you really see what potential actually this youth has in fashion and what they are creating and realizing. That's something really nice.
Seda tells me around 80% of the students go on to work in the fashion industry, helped immensely by the experience they gained during valuable internships in places like London, where they work with established Turkish designers like Bura Aksu. So Buru, we meet again.
Hey.
You were in London, now you're here.
I'm in Istanbul now, yeah. I do that once a year, like I come to IMA, and this is one of the fashion colleges, and I work very closely with the students for like a week, 10 days, and then just go back. It's just the idea is actually bringing like a different dimension to their view of fashion, the way that they approach fashion, the way that they kind of box things. You try to kind of break their boxes and make them think outside the box.
Is there anything you wish you had been told when you were starting out?
I mean, I wish when I start studying, like I wish I could actually know the technical side more, like because that actually took me a long time. And I think that's what I'm always teaching students or trying to pass this on, like that. The kitchen side of fashion is actually more important than the front side. The front side is the whole glamour side, and the fashion shows or celebrities and stuff is only like a 10% of the whole thing. And if you actually don't enjoy the kitchen side, then it's going to be a very hard business for you.
But it seems to be what I'm learning is that kitchen side is the strength.
Yeah, exactly, because that's one of the, I think, also strength of Turkey overall, because there's such a strong textiles and manufacture base here. And I mean, for years and years, many of the big brands use Turkey as one of the main manufacturing sources. And now it's coming to a point that it's just actually kind of stepping up, or in that transition time to move on to being a country that actually also known as their design, so known as their creative process.
25 years ago, it was totally different. I mean, there wasn't fashion. Nobody understood fashion in Turkey 25 years ago. For them, fashion was to copy, or European designers or existing designers at that moment. We were copying them and bringing them to Turkey. Now it changed a lot. I mean, we've come a long way. Everything changed. Turkish textile has changed also. Now we have brilliant, the quality is excellent. Now they're really very competitive in the market. So many people are buying from Turkish, textile, means textile clothing and accessories. So I think really who's the people who starts now, the young generation who starts their companies or their labels now, they're very lucky. We weren't that lucky. We suffered a lot. You know why? Because we said we will do made in Turkey. Like this was at the moment nearly impossible.